Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here with us tonight, or well, tonight. It's tonight for me, but it's hopefully not that late for most of you. My name is Chantal Bilodeau. I am the artistic director of the Arctic Cycle. And today is our second CCTA meetup and the fourth session in our spring speaker series titled Artists Envisioning a Global Green New Deal. So we wanted to, this session is we wanted to create a way for participants and people who might consider participating to meet each other and to be able to connect, learn from each other, know who we all are. We will be recording the main part of the session before we go into breakout rooms. So the participants' presentations will be recorded and they'll be live we'll put them up on our YouTube channel afterwards, so you can always refer to them, or if other people have missed it, they want to see, they'll be able to see it then. Please feel free to use the chat throughout the session. Feel free to introduce yourself, say who you are, where you're logging in from today. And my colleague Julia, who is here with us, will be moderating the chat and we'll be using it later for Q&A. There is a live transcript button available at the bottom of your screen if you need closed captioning. And I want to make sure to thank the Brabson Library and Educational Foundation for making this event possible. Also, before we really get started, I want to acknowledge that the Arctic Cycle is located on the traditional lands of the Lenape people. And I want to pay my respect to them and other Indigenous caretakers of these lands and waters, and to their elders who have lived here, who live here now, and who will live here in the future. And I extend this respect to all Indigenous people everywhere. So as I mentioned, my colleague Julia is here, and we may have another colleague, Thomas, who will join us, and they will be more present towards the second part of this session. Julia will help with the Q&A. And then we have and Sierra also is our stage manager, and she's helping us with all the tech needs of this session. She's in the background. And I'm so happy to introduce our panelists tonight. We have 5 guests who are representing three different countries, and also 3 CCTA events who have happened in 2019, and sometimes some of these guests have participated more than once. So please welcome Nikhil and Himali from Readings in the Shed in India, Elspeth from Massey University in New Zealand, and Francine and Haeweon from the company Blooming Ludus in Korea. Thank you for being here. I'm so happy. And some of you I've interacted on Zoom before. Some of you, it's the first time. So it's so nice to be able to put a face and a voice to a name. Before I turn it to you, I just wanted to say that probably most of you are here know what Climate Change Theater Action is, but I'll just briefly go over it again. So it's an initiative that the Arctic Cycle is doing in collaboration with the Center for Sustainable Practice in the Arts. We do it every 2 years. It started in 2015. We commissioned 50 playwrights from around the world. A few of you are here. And we asked them to write a short play about the climate crisis based on a prompt. And this year's prompt is Envisioning a Global Green New Deal. So that's why we have this, the title is part of the title of this series. Once we have these plays, we make them available to anyone who wants to organize an event in their community. And then we have a big festival in the fall where everybody's presenting their events, and it becomes very exciting because, you know, instead of being just one person in one place doing something that feels small and may feel, you know, that it's not having any impact, and we have a lot of people in all these countries doing things at the same time. So we get great energy from that, and it has a much greater impact. So for the panelists, I would love to hear you talk about the event that you organized in 2019. And, for some of you who have organized events before, you can talk about those too. And it'd be great to hear one of the highlights and maybe one of the challenges you encountered. And if you know that you're participating this year, feel free to share about that too. And first, I'm going to turn it to Nikhil and Himali from Readings in the Shed.
Thank you. I'll be sharing screen. I hope you can see this. Wonderful. Hello, everyone. My name is Nikhil Kotara. I am the Artistic Director of Readings in the Shed. It's an initiative which basically focuses on the written word. It has been initiated in 2018, in April 2018, on International Day of the Book, that is April 23rd. And it's been active ever since. We focus on multiple projects. Himali is is my partner in crime here, and we work together in this entire project. Over to you, Himali.
Thanks so much. So like Nikhil said, we started in April 2018. Our goal through these 3 years has been to contextualize our reading to the time that we are in, to a particular date, to highlight issues, across the world, our society. So just to tell you about a couple of really special events that we did. This one was called Being and Belonging, which focused on the refugee crisis. And we did stories about refugees, fiction and non-fiction stories to highlight the issue. It was held around the World Refugee Day. So yeah, that was one. We've also tried to use different mediums through which to tell our stories. So we've done poetry, we've done essays, we've done short stories. I think one of the most fun and special events was when we did graphic stories, which is a kind of a underdog as far as literary devices for telling stories is concerned. So we thought we should take the opportunity to highlight the effect and the impact that graphic stories can have to tell some, very serious but fun things. So we, for instance, something that is very relevant right now, we did a story called Palestine by Joe Sacco, which is a graphic story spread out over 8 or 9 issues. So yeah, that was the other thing.
So that's when the entire conversation on climate change started coming in, because we got introduced through a friend to the idea of CCTA, about 50 different playwrights who wrote 50 different plays on the subject of climate change. And that's when we realized that in 2019 that we should, when such rich material is available, we should be able to utilize it for the benefit of our audiences in Mumbai, who is looking forward to work with and to engage with this kind of material. And that's where the entire idea of the Climate Chronicles started coming in. And we decided to do 8 amongst those 50 plays. So we read all the 50 plays which have been written by all the different playwrights all across the world in 2019. And we put together a show for the same. Here is our actor, Kyla, and this is how we promoted the show. So this will give you a little insight on how we went about things.
Climate change is a reality, and it is our generation's most immediate concern. It's been a topic of discussion at all major world events and has been playing on the minds of every great world leader. So it was just right that the theatre community came together to take action. Short stories were written to show us a mirror. And as we speak, these plays are being performed in every country across the globe. As local action, Readings in the Shed invited students from Mumbai to write 100 words on what they would say to people who don't believe that climate change exists. Several of these students poured their hearts out. So, will you come listen to these stories, and will you take action? Readings in the Shed, the Climate Chronicles. Come read with us on the 14th of December at 7 p.m. at the NCPA Tata Gardens. We hope to see you there.
Over to you, Himali.
So, like our actor Kyla said, we sent out a poster of this kind to schools in Bombay and through our social media. The brief is very simple. Um, what do you say to somebody who says, I don't believe in climate change? The idea was to start dialogue. The idea also was to bring out the thoughts and opinions of young people, who are, going to be bearing the brunt of our past actions. So we felt that nobody better than them to school us on what needs to be done. So that was the idea. And these so we interacted with kids. A lot of kids wrote in their 100-word stories, their 100-word responses to that question. And based on what we got, we selected a few of these kids to come and talk about it during our event. So these were the 10 kids, 12 kids who were a part of um, that performance, and they came and spoke about it. Going to highlight a couple of things that were said in that event by the kids. Nikhil?
This is one of the responses. Could a person genuinely be ignorant to brush aside crystal clear signs of an entire planet dying? Are we all in denial? Our generation's first reason for distress isn't the thought of having an insecure future. It is the possibility of not having a future at all. Climate change isn't a mere prophecy anymore, it is a reality. Because someone somewhere down the line thought the planet wasn't theirs to save. Ayushi Roy, 14 years from Podar International.
We had another student from Podar International School, Powai, 15-year-old Vanshika Gupta. She said, didn't you hear nature's sirens? Glaciers melting, ozone layer depletion, rising pollution level. They're not caused by a magic wand. They are our creation. Thought about death? Well, think fast. Tomorrow lies uncertain as the climate unfolds our deathbeds. The earth was once a holy planet, evergreen and blue to its core. Now it is a garbage can. And you say there is no climate change? Where have you been?
So when we put together the event, we were thinking, will somebody come and engage with something as serious as climate change? Initially, our initial inhibition was that, and who will host this event? In Mumbai, we thought people would want to go for something more more like comedy, and that was our initial inhibition. But we were welcomed very well. So this is National Center of Performing Arts. It very openly gave us their garden where we could perform. Almost 100 people attended this event. And of course, there was the other challenge of we thought whether the students will be giving any responses. We've opened up this action. Will anybody respond? We got quite a few responses. In fact, Himali was tired editing so many responses which came by, and the choosing the 10 was a big deal. These are some of the images of the event. We performed different plays from the climate change theatre action. This is one of the most beautiful plays we performed. Laila Pines for the Wolf, a very interesting take on the Little Red Riding Hood story, where the wolf is pining because of climate change, can't cross the bridge. This is the Appealing that we performed. Here is an image of Breathing Space, another play that was from the list. The Arrow, which was which was written by Abhishek Mazumdar. He's an Indian playwright. So we tried to diversify all the possible types of stories that we could perform. And there were quite a diverse group and very, very well written, very powerful stories that we performed. Failed experiment where a couple of aliens are deciding what to do with Earth as a planet. And then came across the next opportunity. Himali?
So, a good thing spirals. A good thing, you don't need to do anything to push a good thing out. People come out. So we have actually a few people from Nalanda Public School who are here with us in this meeting. And they were fantastic collaborators. They heard of our event, and all schools are talking about climate change with their students. And somewhere I think they resonated with the idea of theater teaching the topic through theater. And they invited us to come perform in their school for their students. We had a huge crowd of, I think, about maybe 300 students who attended this program.
This was where we performed. It was in the school hall. Lovely program, very well organized by Nalanda Public School. This is one of the responses from one of the students from Nalanda Public School. I'll read it out quickly. Black is my favorite color. It stands out but can blend into. It consumes in itself every other tint, and defying all odds, it moves forward. It comes towards me, and I want to embrace it. I've always loved shadows. Only its embrace begins to envelop me. My eyes begin to water. The air in my lungs is thin. My throat chokes. Smoke, charred trees, the air thick with soot, the black around me spiraling. It is consuming every other tint. It was evident all these years, but for so long it blended with the development. Defying all odds, it moves forward, enveloping other things, causing more destruction until there is nothing left to destroy anymore. Ring, ring, my alarm buzzes. I sit up, my mind numb, wondering how long black will remain only a favorite color. Do we need our world to be overtaken by darkness to realize that climate change isn't a myth? Charvi Yadav, 15 years, Nalanda Public School.
We had Anushka Badgujar, 14 years, also from Nalanda Public School, who moved us with her powerful words. We live in a strange world, a world where the name Stormy with an I receives more media attention than a catastrophic crisis. How dare you? A phrase said by a 16-year-old Swedish girl made the earth quake at the UN last year. The phrase does not apply to our leaders but to us also. Because how dare we not pay attention to what is more important in the world? We are at a crossroads where we can either be selfish or make a difference. When your grandchildren ask you, why didn't you do something when you had the chance? Your apology better be good. The day when we can't look ourselves in the eye is the day when sensibility in this world ends and oblivion begins.
These were some of the responses. Thank you, Himali. What we plan to do this year, and of course, it is more exciting to engage with this action, at least this plan. We've been having conversations with multiple organizers and possible groups. First, we're looking at collaborations as an idea. Of course, we are looking at our previous collaborators who've already worked with us in climate change, and we're looking at other ways and expanding not only us performing, but also finding other collaborators who would like to perform, because the amount of material available with CCTA and the diversity of it is very large. And we genuinely like that all 50 plays be performed in India through theater groups. Of course, me and Himali also teach in an institution called Wilson College. We'll involve our students to perform many of these plays this year. We'll look forward to again collaborating with multiple schools, colleges, to see what the students have to say about these performances. We are looking at funding opportunities primarily, and we've already started conversations with some. So we're looking at if we get these opportunities, then we would be able to galvanize some of this through microgrants to communities, theater communities in Mumbai. And maybe we'll see this very much in action soon. And I think that is about it for our presentation. This is our email ID. If there are any questions, we'd be happy to take.
Thank you. This is wonderful. Of course, we hear a little bit, we ask everybody after their events, how did it go? And we get some pictures, but I never get the full size of what happened until I hear it from you. So it's wonderful for me to hear. And the setting of the reading was so beautiful with all of the lights hanging. And the words of the students are very powerful. So thank you for this wonderful presentation. We'll do questions a little bit later. So for now, we'll just go to the next presentation, and I'm going to turn it to you, Elspeth.
Thank you, Chantal. I'll just share my screen for you. So, kia ora koutou katoa, mahi ahau ki te kunanga ki Puruhuroa, ki te whanganui a Tara, ko Elspeth Tilley tōku ingoa. I just said, hello everyone. I work at Massey University in Wellington in New Zealand, and my name is Elspeth Tilley, and I also would like to acknowledge that the land that I am speaking to you from, the mana whenua or Indigenous owners of that land, are Te Aotearoa and Taranaki whānui. I have done 3 CCTAs, and actually for me what's really interesting I think is some of the evolution or change that's happened. So I will mostly probably speak about the most recent one, but I am just going to touch on some of the earlier ones as well, as they've been quite different and they have changed. Going to try and get that to go to the next slide. Okay, so 2015 at Massey University we did a show called Waves, and it was really quite groundbreaking in the way that we were able to find being fun and having fun with climate change as a way to break down people's resistance to talking about it. So the pictures there are from David Geary's play Morohu and Titi. It was just this amazing, fantastic there was a cross-dressing Al Gore, there was an iceberg in a wedding dress, there was an ancient dinosaur lizard and a bird who were adrift on an ice floe in the middle of the ocean, who were kind of having this domestic dispute. And we started with that and the fabulous costumes. And I think it just really threw people. They were expecting doom and gloom, and then it wasn't, and something sort of shifted in the audience. And I think then that enabled us to have at the end some really serious conversations, because people had felt led into it, not bombarded with it the whole way through. So it really opened my eyes to what theatre could do in different ways other than just telling realistic stories. But one of the challenges I think in 2015 was that I did it kind of on my own. So I recruited a whole bunch of people, but I directed, I produced, I did all the publicity, I did everything. And so it ended up quite a kind of individualistic curation of what I thought. And so what I wanted to do in 2017 in doing it again was to really change that and open it up out to collaborators. So I was really fortunate to in 2017, I got funding. I think that was also a really important step. I did it in 2015 with all volunteers, which was wonderful, and everyone had a really good time and was very passionate about it. But I really came to feel afterwards that I maybe had contributed to undercutting the value of artistic and creative labour, and I didn't want to do that again. So in 2017, I applied for a bunch of different funds and got enough to pay everybody, actors, directors, crew. And so I got to work with Phil Braithwaite, who I think I saw on Haeweon on your presentation coming up later. You're actually going to show us a bit about one of Phil's plays. So that's a great connection there. And Phil and a Samoan New Zealander theatre director, Ian Lassar, collaborated with me in 2017 in helping direct and produce the whole thing, and it just made such a huge difference. So we were able to do a much broader range of plays. We were able to deal much better with representation issues. We were able to, so Ian brought with him a wonderful cast of Samoan actors to do his play. So you can see in the picture there, that's Oriwa Mitchell, who did a beautiful traditional dance, and it just changed the whole dynamic. I also was really lucky in 2017 to be able to collaborate with Catherine Bagnall, who's a performance artist. So she had a look at my script, which was about penguins, and got really inspired by that. And she's a upcycling fashion designer, so she makes sustainable fashion items, but she also does this really interesting performance art where it's kind of post-humanist. It's about breaking down the othering of animals by getting people to think about, well, what if I was an animal? So she did this walk through town from Parliament up to the venue where we were having our show, where everybody was dressed as penguins, and they went along and they chatted to people. Passers-by would come up and say, what on earth are you doing? What's all this about? And they'd say, oh, it's all about climate change. And they created such a buzz. It was a really fun, again, kind of thing to do, and you wouldn't think of fun in the context of climate change. Thinking about challenges for that, we should have given the penguins more talking points because we didn't anticipate so many people would stop them, and we should have had a few really clear key messages about what we wanted to get across. And also, so many people stopped and talked to them that they were late. And so if you watch the live stream of our event on HowlRound, there's like 15 minutes at the beginning where I'm wandering around the theatre looking at my watch, wondering where all the penguins are who are supposed to arrive for us to start. So leave lots and lots of time if you're going to do outdoor public interaction, because people loved it, and they could have probably stayed out there talking to the crowds for half a day more, and it still would have been going really well. So probably, I think, yeah, just broadening it created a much better event in 2017 than it had in 2015. And we added also Generation Zero, which is a local ecology group, came and did a talk at the end. And I think that took our sort of unstructured talk from 2015, which was still useful, but into a more structured way. And apparently Generation Zero got heaps of donations and heaps of signups at the end of that as well. So it felt like we were also doing something more concrete with our action as things were evolving. Okay, so then in 2019, I did it with a group of students as a class instead of either using volunteers or paid actors. So this was another kind of evolution. And I'm going to be really kind of honest, because I know there's people out there listening who are thinking about how to do it with students. And I'm going to say, I think I won't do it with students for a 12 weeks of class again, because it was a long time to engage with a very challenging topic. And I actually think that they got more out of it when we just, and the first 2 times we would do it over a long weekend, and everyone would have learned all their lines before they came, but then they'd come in for intensive rehearsals. And I think that that was a safer way to do it. And so I learned from that. But one of the things I am really, really proud about of 2019 is that we actually did a carbon neutral production. And that was a really great learning process for the students. So we went right from the beginning of talking about what carbon neutral means and how you set the boundaries around an event, because you can actually decide to do it just on the immediate impacts or the impacts that your venues and travel cause, and you can put the rings of where your impact is going to be measured to out in a number of different ways. So the students were involved in making those decisions, discussing that and thinking about the implications of that decision making. And I think that was probably one of the gifts that 2019 gave them the most, was they can take that skill of doing carbon calculations now to everything that they do, and they're thinking constantly in their life now about those carbon calculations. So once we'd calculated everything, we tried to offset as much as we could, or reduce as much as we could, even things like asking that when we had a transport van to take us outside for our outdoor performances, that it be an electric van, that kind of thing. But anything that we couldn't, we calculated, and then we did some donations to a licensed carbon offset tree planting organisation, and we gave away trees, and we counted the trees that we gave away in our carbon offset. And that was a really fun thing to do as well. I still have people come up to me now and say, oh, my kawa tree is now this tall and it's already big enough, I can have some leaves off it for my salad or my tea. And that just gave people a sense of an ongoing connection to the event every time they see their little tree that they took away at the end. We gave away 60 trees at the event, so there was quite a lot. And they're all out there now, and they're growing and people are using them. So I think that was a really beautiful thing. We also did totally recycled and upcycled costuming again. So you can see in the picture there, all those coffee cup lids that make the little turtle for the piece that was about drift netting. They are all collected out of the bins around campus. So the students were seeing where the rubbish was, they were thinking about that, and they were having those conversations over those 12 weeks with their fellow students to get those messages out. So there were definitely advantages of doing it over the long term, but one of the mistakes I made was So some of the groups devised pieces, and the sea turtle and rubbish one was a devised piece, and it was a really beautiful work. And there was a group of Indigenous students who also did an amazing work, which I'll show you in a minute. And some of the students chose plays from the 50. So I think if I do it again with students, I will really carefully limit the plays that they chose, because they made the mistake, I think, of conflating a really, really dark play with something that would be dramatically powerful. And they thought that they would be able to get more impact just because it was one of the really serious plays in the collection. And then they had to work with that play for 12 weeks. And I have a really strong process with a lot of de-rolling training. I use Brechtian acting technique in my actor training. I actually ban method acting in my classrooms, because I don't think for students of that age that it's appropriate that they draw on their personal trauma or personal experiences to inform character. So we do representational acting. But if any of those students missed a number of sessions, they would be a little bit behind with that. They found it difficult to catch up again with the process. And then I'd have to work with them lots and lots outside class. I'd have to require them to come to special sessions to go over their de-rolling again. And so it just got messy. Nobody was harmed, I will say that. But I think that in terms of managing the risk, in future, I will curate much more carefully a much smaller selection of plays for students if they're going to be working with them intensively, and if they're going to be working with them for academic assessment, because that puts so much more pressure on them. If they're doing it as a volunteer thing, as was the first 2 times, there's not that pressure on, they're not having to get a grade. So I think that's a really important consideration when working with students as well. So it was still an amazing production, I have to say. We went out into the streets and we did our performance on the steps of Parliament and in Wellington's busiest mall, and we had heaps of people stopping, asking questions. You can see all of the people in the back of the slide with their phones up and taking photos, and you could actually see we chalked the walk with the hashtag CCTA and hashtag climate change theatre action, and you could see on social media in the days afterwards people sharing their own photos with that hashtag coming up. So it definitely created a lot of interest and a lot of conversation. So we'd done it at Parliament, we were doing it in the mall, and we were supposed to do it twice in the mall, but some hecklers came past and heckled the students, and also some thieves came past and tried to steal our gear. And we had like staff standing there, but you can't have your eyes everywhere all at once. So we did only end up in the really, really busy mall doing 1 performance rather than 2. And again, I think, you know, maybe I just needed to get every person who was in the cast and crew to bring 3 of their flatmates to kind of make a wall of human eyes to help with that. So yeah, I don't know. When I used to do street theatre outside all the time when I was kind of in my 20s, I think I took it a bit lightly, but I think actually the whole climate of people's ability to discuss things has changed. And I think, you know, back in the 90s or 80s when I did it, you wouldn't have had hecklers. But now people, because of social media, are much more quick to like say that, you know, they don't agree or to shout something out in public. And so I think that's just, we have to be aware that maybe the climate of acceptance for street theatre might be a bit different than when I learned how to do it anyway. So showing my age here, but I was so proud of the students. They were really brave. They did a fantastic job. They put their absolute hearts and souls into it. I just love this picture. So they're embodying a tree being cut down, and the student at the far right end is Papatuanuku, which is the Earth Mother, and the scream that she did, you could see people stopping, turning, looking and coming towards to find out what was happening all up and down the mall. And so we ended up with a really big crowd around, and then we had some excellent discussion with those people who wanted to have positive, constructive discussions at the end of it. I'll probably leave everything else for the questions, but it has been incredibly important to be part of it and to be able to start those conversations with really good theatre scripts that that people can get their teeth into and that can change the way we're talking and thinking about these things. So I just wanted to finish with saying again to you, Chantal, and to all of your team that you've brought together to make this possible. I really see that it has made a difference to how people think and talk about climate change, both among the participants and among the audiences. We always evaluate, and we always get 80 to 90% of both participants and audience members who fill in our evaluation saying, I've changed my attitude and I've changed my behavior as a result of this really powerful thing that I've either been part of or I've just seen. So thank you. You are making a huge difference.
Thank you, Elspeth. And it's really encouraging to hear, because of course with theater, sometimes it's just anecdotal. You know, you do something, people say something nice and you think, well, I think I've had an impact. But when you have a formal way to evaluate that, it's even more powerful. And I love the penguins. I will always love the penguins. Seeing like this picture of all these penguin costumes walking down the street is amazing. And as we are about to do an outdoors event in September, it's really a good thing for us to know, like budget a lot of time, because people like to interact. So we'll definitely keep that in mind. I will turn it to Haeweon and Francine from Blooming Lotus.
Hi, so we are Blooming Ludus. I'm just gonna share my screen.
Ta-da! All right, so welcome everybody. This is going to be a bit of a conversation since Haeweon and I aren't in the same room, or sadly in the same country. I'm right now in Canada, and Haeweon is in Korea. So this is a really nice opportunity for us to reflect on the work that we did in 2019, because we also worked on this project remotely together. We are Blooming Ludus. Our company focuses on connecting people, art, and the environment to fight for climate justice and a sustainable future. Our company started in about 2015 in London, UK, where we met during our masters. So we've been doing this work for 3 years now. And yeah, getting involved with climate theater action has been really fantastic for us. So we're going to tell you a bit about the project we did in 2019 and some of our ideas for the future.
So this is what we did in 2019. We made this big project of Play for the Planet with Wessel at the Wessel Arts Center for Learning in Seoul. It was a series of drama workshop with young people. So it consisted of pilot program and a series of youth theater workshop and a family day. So we started with, let's say where we met, actually CCTA. So we came across CCTA on social media, and we thought it was a lovely bridge that we can bring to young people, because especially actually because CCTA, all the scripts are in English. So I wanted to bring this bridge in to put the voice from East Asia as well. So we started selecting plays for young people, considering the cultural backgrounds and translation and difference of the representation that we can bring in Korea.
Mm-hmm. And we settled on, actually both of our plays were from New Zealand that year, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, we chose Ice Flow by Philip Braithwaite and 6 Polar Bears Fell Out of the Sky This Morning by Alistair Emerson. We thought that these plays would be really good and juicy for the kids to not just have a potentially educational experience, but to get into the sensory feeling of art making. And we thought there was a lot of opportunity for humor and for the physical senses.
And while I was translating the script, thanks to two amazing playwrights who gave the permission, I started with a pilot workshop because I wanted to know how young people in Korea react to this issue of a climate crisis. And that time I was lucky to be working as a teaching artist at Wessel Arts Center for Learning. And we just started looking the issue of climate crisis with the documentary. We watched Chasing Coral together on our first day, and I want to see how children react. And I was a bit surprised because some kids thought this documentary could be boring, and then they actually got really into how actually it affects the life on the earth, and that is really connected when they were embodying the corals in the documentary with all the drama games. And then we came up to this, the board that you're looking is saying the reason we love the earth. And they wrote all the amazing things like laughter, family, the scenery in the autumn, our house, chicken, bed, Amazon, my besties, and clean water and all that. And then so I now knew like how children react to the issue, and then we started this drama workshop. So because Ice Flow by Philip Braithwaite was based on the artwork of Olafur Eliasson. Sorry, I'm so bad at pronouncing today. So we watched a short video introducing the project, and also we watched Greta's speech at the UN, so young people know actually they can do something about it. And I wanted to emphasize through the whole project that it is about action, not the knowledge. That because young people were actually very well known about what's going on. They are so well known of all the recycling, plastic, and zero waste movement in Korea, but actually it was hard for them to connect that there is something that they could do. And
they didn't have youth striking as much in Korea at that time either, did they?
No, not really. Climate change was always like the issue behind, and then actually pandemic really helped to bring this issue onto the table. And there was a big pouring and typhoon in Korea last year, so that really changed people's perception. Actually, this is affecting our daily lives. So yeah, but still, school strike is not kind of a big deal in Korea, and also protest is happening in a very small scale usually. So it was important for me to let young people know that actually there is still something that we can do, and there is a reason that we have to keep taking action and putting their voice into this conversation. And what you're looking at now is a small exhibition we created during the project of what young people imagine that will disappear in climate crisis. So they thought there will be less color, less air, less tree, and people might lose jobs, so that they are actually looking at this with the issue. And then we started learning the script and see what's actually inside the issue. So they tried to see what these icebergs in ice flow are talking and how to connect it. So the good thing about these two scripts that we chose is it was about icebergs and 6 polar bears, and also the media and the politicians, and how this issue is conveyed from the media to the public. So, and the age range of young participants were from like 8 to 11. So some young participants had a hard time understanding how this media work in this conversation. So I tried to break it down, and we came up with these games and physicality of the drama. And they started reading the script. And for the Ice Flow by Philip Braithwaite, I made it more like kind of chorus work. So these 6 kids represented 3 icebergs in the script, and they tried to read what they want to read together. And so the voices echoed here and there in the room. So I wanted to create the space illustrated in the script itself. And this might be our highlight. That
It's what they enjoyed the most, wasn't it? Yeah, Haeweon really enjoyed that. That was a really fun part, and they had a lot of interesting time just playing with the fact of melting. And I was over in the UK at this time, hurriedly coming up with music and sounds for the kids to use and for the students to use to explore that process. So I was making really interesting noises with guitar strings and things like that, and recording them and sending them over.
Yeah, so with Francine's music, young people try to understand with their body, like what does it mean by melting and how it's connected to their body as well. And for the 6 polar bears fell out of the sky this morning, they tried to see how we represent each other in the issue of climate crisis, and what does it mean, like this image of polar bear shouldn't be just the image, but actual life that connected to all the lives on the earth together. So everything was broke down into these drama games. So they interviewed the polar bear together and tried to really find how polar bears are connected to the planet at the moment. And they also made their own props, and it's all recycled materials. And yeah, so you can see the egg cartons and all the scrap papers running around in the education center. And this was the first performance of the youth theater for the CCTA. So I divide the room into different spaces. So this is where the ice flow happened. So when they're, and the audience were mostly their family and friends, and when they entered the space, they could actually feel this exhibition of icebergs. And this was the 6 polar bears fell out of sky this morning. And yes. Sorry. Oh, sorry.
It doesn't like the next picture, does it?
Sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical problem at the moment, but
well, if it doesn't go forward, we can talk just a bit more about the family day.
Yes.
Oh, that's, yeah. There we go.
Sorry. There you go. Can you? Yeah.
Yep, we can see it again. Yeah, back on track.
Yes. Whew, sorry. So this was the first response from the audience, and we could clearly see this actually climate crisis seemed to be just staying as the knowledge and something that you pass from the news every day, but by actually listening to what their family member is reading, they thought it was more closer to their actual life. And then we came up to the family day. So the whole family were invited, so they can actually go through the process together and explore this climate change theater action together as family. And then they had a chance to discuss what the future that they are seeing, and with their little brothers and a different age of family members, they could discuss like deeper about the future. So, and it was really interesting to see, because when there were only young people in the group, when we were talking about the future, they were more a bit negative about what they're seeing, the future, that because all the grown-ups tell them is a crisis, but actually the Korean society doesn't suggest what kind of actions are taken and what young people can do in at this time of crisis. But as they are working with family, this time it was a bit more, let's say, funky. They could find a bit of positiveness, and they knew what they could do by making the scene together of the future.
And we asked them to come up with pledges too, didn't we?
Yes, we read the script together. So now they're young brothers, volunteers, so the age group got a bit wider. And then we can see it later, a bit later. And then we came up with the pledge at the very end of the day. So we made the pledge of West Seoul Youth Theatre family for the planet. So you can see that it starts from like recycle, reuse. It's also interesting to see that organize your shoes is from our youngest participant who are just 5 years old.
It makes me think about how they know, you know, where shoes go maybe at the end of the day. So you think about how many shoes you actually have in your closet.
Yes. So it was really interesting to see how this kind of action could be, as other panels today already mentioned, this could be actually a fun experience. And by making into an action and experience, they can embody the issue more like closer to their life. And yeah, and this video is actually on our YouTube channel, so you can always have a look. I will just shortly play it before we end, before the introduction. And all the clothes that we used as iceberg costume were also leftover materials from the market. So we collected leftover clothes from the market to use as our props and costumes.
제발 알려줘줘. 내가 죽는다고 내 옆에 팔팔하게 살아있는데 이쪽은 정말 황당한 애. 날 여기다 데려다 주고 사람이 얘는 못 돌아가는 거야. 10년 동안 내가 한 거라고 그냥 가만히 앉아있을 수밖에 없어. 난 내가 그냥 내 자리에 있었어. 사람들은 내가 있다는 것도 몰랐을 거야. 근데 갑자기 내 역할이 중요해진 거야. 나는 남들 쓰레기 치우는 일만 열심히 했어. 그래서 난 그런 일을 잘한다고.
So for the time-wise, I will stop here and you can catch up later. And all this project is exhibited in the Open Lab exhibition. It's kind of regular annual exhibition at the West Seoul Arts Center for Learning, where this whole project was happened. So more people could see our process together.
Thank you. This is wonderful. And I want to say also thank you to you, Haeweon, for translating some of the plays in Korean. Every year we have a few people here and there who go, you know, who make the effort to translate into their own language. And that's always wonderful because we don't have the capacity to do that. And I'm also glad that, like, eventually one of our dreams, I guess, is to get to a point where we can have a smaller collection of plays written just for children. But in our collection of 50, every year there are a few plays that are appropriate for children, that work well for children. So I'm glad we have that, but we hope to be able to do a little bit more. So I'm going to say thank you to all of our presenters, and this is where we're going to stop the recording. This can live for other people to watch, but the rest is going to be just